Do you know what animals these are? Do you have any idea what they're doing? Well, come along today as we learn how animals talk. Animals communicate or talk with each other in lots of different ways. Some animals make sounds that you can hear and that other animals can hear. Some animals, through their movements or their colors, can talk to each other and say specific things. Other animals can use their smell to talk to each other. So though you may not have thought of animals talking with each other, they really do communicate, and it's very important. If as you came into the zoo you heard this sound, what would you think that it is? The closer you got, you'd realize it's not a siren or a machine of any kind, but it's an animal. These are white-cheeked gibbons. Gibbons like these make an awfully lot of noise. They're famous for their antics up in the tree, swinging from branch to branch, but also they are one of the loudest mammals in the world. When they're excited, they'll broadcast their message to all the other gibbons in the area and tell them, "I'm excited." Another gibbon that will make a lot of noise when it's excited is the siamang. The big black siamangs will inflate their throat sac and give off a sharp, clear, barking sound when they're excited. The rattlesnake is an animal that talks in a different way. It will shake its tail, which sounds a little bit like a baby's rattle, and that's where it gets its name. As a warning, it'll warn other animals of its presence. Sometimes if you're hiking in the woods, you might see or hear a rattlesnake, and you should be careful because they are dangerous animals, though they rarely bite people. But the rattlesnake is an animal that makes a sound and uses his sound as a warning. The bald eagle is a bird that doesn't just talk with its tail, it talks with its color. In fact, bald eagles aren't really bald. They have white head and tail feathers. Bald was a word that was used to mean white head feathers. However, when a bald eagle is young, or an immature bird, until it's 4 or 5 years old, it doesn't have white feathers on its head and tail. It's brown all over. And then, as it matures, it will get white head and tail feathers that let all the other bald eagles know that finally it is a full-grown adult bird. In the same way, the red-tailed hawk doesn't always have red tail feathers. When it's young, until its 3rd or 4th year, it is brown all over. But then, as it matures, it will get in red tail feathers, which are a symbol to other red-tailed hawks that finally it is full-grown and able to mate and able to do all the things that full-grown birds do. We asked you what these were. Probably you knew they were bees, but could you answer the question if they were talking to one another or not? Well, let's think about some of the other animals we've learned and how they talk. It's important for all animals to be able to communicate with one another somehow. People have to talk to one another, and we do it in lots of different ways, but normally we do it with our voices. Other animals also use their voices. They'll make loud noises, sometimes sounding an alarm to warn other animals. Sometimes they'll make noises to attract one another and say, hey, look at me. But animals don't just use their voices. Sometimes they'll use visual signs. Some will lift their tails as a warning, and others will use their colors. They'll use their colors sometimes to attract a mate or to just attract attention to themselves, to sort of show off. Some animals use their colors not just to say, look at me, but to say, now I'm mature enough that I'm really finally a grown-up animal. Many animals use their smell to communicate, like the ferrets that we saw. By using their smell and leaving it on the ground, it tells other animals where they've been and where they live. These animals are honeybees. You're probably familiar with honeybees because you like to eat honey in your food or drinks. In order for bees to make honey, it's important for them to talk to one another. But they don't always talk the way that we do. For a bee to make honey, it has to find a flower and collect pollen and bring it back to its nest or beehive. So after a bee finds a garden of flowers, it will fly back to the nest and tell the other bees how far away the flowers are, how many there are, and even what kind they are. Bees communicate by a thing called a waggle dance. The bee will fly back into the hive and shake very hard, and that tells the bee all the information about the flower garden. And then they'll fly out, collect pollen, and bring it back. Bees, like other animals, need to communicate. So the next time you come to the zoo, be sure to look at the animals and be sure to listen. They may be talking to you, because now you know animals do talk.